Welcome to the HEARTS Entwined podcast. In this podcast, we'll be having discussions around the secrets which attract lasting, healthy, fulfilling relationships, creating a healthy mindset, and what women should know and understand about men. Introducing your host, Lyn Smith, the Queen of Hearts, relationship expert, trainer, speaker, and best-selling author of the Cupid's Bow technique. Lyn's mission is to have a positive impact in reducing divorce, domestic violence, and suicide.
Welcome to the HEARTS Entwined podcast. This is your host, Lyn Smith, the Queen of Hearts. And today, listeners, we're going to be talking about how to manage your emotions. And for that, I've got a fantastic guest. Her name is Janet Smith Harrison. She's an emotional mastery for relationships coach. So welcome, Janet.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Lyn.
You're very welcome. So I think this is an essential topic, isn't it, for having healthy relationships. So how was it for you that you actually got into this as a specialism for yourself?
Okay. So if I go right back to probably where it started. So I'd been married for 24 years and very suddenly, out of the blue, complete shock, I found out my marriage was over. So this was 2010. I had 3 grown-up children. My youngest had just gone to university. I was, to say blindsided is an understatement. My husband had been having an affair. This all came out, and my marriage was over. I will admit, did not handle that situation with any dignity. My emotions completely ran the show. And for a long period of time, I was a mess. I was a complete wreck. The ground had disappeared from under me, and I had absolutely no resources, no tools, no defences to deal with that. And it took me a good 4 or 5 years to kind of get some semblance of stability. And then I embarked on trying to find myself by dating and getting it all wrong and still operating from this very wounded place. And you can imagine what that brought. And I slowly but surely realised that the problem was less what had happened and more how I was handling it. And so then I embarked on a whole journey of personal development and learning and finding out, and realised there was a better way. There was a better way, and it started with understanding my emotions, learning how to control them and be in charge and use them for my good instead of them working against me. So that's where it comes from.
Well done you, first of all, Janet. That's commendable, for actually, embarking on that self-help personal growth journey. I've been on that myself, and realize the power of anything lies within, not without, doesn't it? And quite often we're living in a world where we're reacting rather than responding in a calm, more gentler way.
Absolutely. I could not agree more. And I start, when I start working with a new client, I talk to them about the power of the pause and this, how significant that's been in my healing journey and getting myself to a place where actually now I can help others to do that. But it started with realizing there's a point where the very best thing you can do, the greatest gift to yourself, is to pause and to take in what's happened, what you're feeling, what that might mean. Give yourself the space and time to consider what your next word or your next action might be. To learn that and to realise that and to bring that into your life is transformational.
And it also helps us to get a better understanding, because whoever's communicating to us, be that a partner or another person that we're in a relationship with, whether it's family dynamics, work dynamics, or whatever, the power of actually, like you said, taking that pause can help us to gain more clarity and understanding by probably our next question, acknowledging that you've heard the person who spoke to you rather than just reacting on maybe an assumption of what you've heard.
Yeah, and I think we in relationships, like you say, with whatever relationship it might be, I think so much of the time we're on automatic pilot and we're not listening, well, we're not hearing. We might be listening, but we're not hearing what's being said. And we're very present to not being heard. And so we're kind of in this automatic pilot interaction that's not really communicating. It is just words going backwards and forwards, or actually, which can be worse, is we read a message, we respond to a message, which it can end up in even more hot water from electronic communication than actually speaking to each other. So yeah, it's that not being present, not being in control, not having the we're not in control of our own emotions and responses. They're a very automatic response that comes from often a very, very wounded and difficult place that no good is ever going to come from that.
And quite often I feel that we get automatically defensive if we feel like we're being criticised, and therefore we're immediately shut down to what's being said to us. And then from that place, we're just waiting to jump in, aren't we? We're not actually listening to what's being said to us. We're just waiting to jump in with the opinion of what we think is right, based on, whatever you feel is your I'm right opinion at that moment in time.
Yeah, and it's I mean that what can be underneath that is massive as well, isn't it? There's so many elements to who we are at any given moment in time. Everything that's informed us up to that point, our beliefs, our morals, our values, and they're exactly that. They're ours. And other people have different values and perspectives and experiences, but we can sometimes be so caught up and so unaware of the value of using emotional intelligence rather than acting on instinct, or using kind of the intelligence we have in terms of the facts and knowledge we've gathered over a lifetime. It's not everything, is it? And just sometimes because something's truth doesn't mean somebody else might have a different truth. So yes, I think it's so easy to get trapped into a way of communicating and relating that's very much based on what we know and think and believe, without considering or hearing the other person's perspective.
I found what has been a great exercise, and I don't know whether you do something similar with your clients, but actually not facing a person when you're talking to them, but just actually saying, well, let's sit in front of a blank TV screen and talk to the TV screen, and agree that one person starts talking and expresses their truth, and the other person just has to actively listen and wait till that person's finished before they then have their turn.
Yeah, I think that idea of active listening, of I get clients to kind of sit and imagine that they're in a field and the other person's in another field, kind of to kind of get that real sense of, this is the space around me that my listening needs to expand into this space. But I think another thing that's made me think about is most people's allergy to conflict, most people's kind of horror at the thought of getting into an argument or disagreeing or being in a conflict situation, shying away from that and seeing it as a bad thing. When I look back, one of the first things I said when my marriage was ending was, people said, oh, well, I didn't realize it was so, and I'd say, no, it wasn't bad. There was no arguments, there was no, and over time in learning, I can look back and think, that's not such a great thing. The fact that there wasn't disagreement and there wasn't arguments, that's not something to stand at the side of and be proud of. It indicates a lack of communication and a shying away from, and a not sharing each other's truths. So I think we get caught sometimes in that place where, and for each person it's different, where their allergy to conflict might come from. But I think it's part of mastering your own emotions, learning to be okay with whatever comes up, whether it's anger, whether it's shame, embarrassment. Be okay with it and know that it's an emotion. It's not the whole of who you are. It's a message for us to listen to and do something with, but it doesn't actually say anything about you. And so learning that, which is part of what I do, is I think it empowers people to be okay with conflict. And actually that's a massive, massive element of having good, solid, true, healthy relationships.
Yeah, it's obviously not to the point where it gets really abusive or physical,
No.
hopefully, but you know, like you say, having healthy
Yeah.
conversation around different opinions is fine. And
Yeah.
I was with my ex-husband for 23 years, and we had a very calm relationship. And I don't think it was because either of us was afraid to rock the boat. I think we were just both quite laid back. And
Yeah.
but that in its own dynamic, and it wasn't a toxic relationship, and it wasn't an unhealthy relationship. But I just felt in that relationship, I just felt unfulfilled because we were just going along on different paths, and that's fine
Yeah.
too. You know, where you
Yeah.
just grow apart naturally.
Yeah.
The
But
relationship runs its course.
if somebody's unhappy though, and I suppose where that kind of grew from was looking at as blankly as I could at that situation and think, well, you know, this person chose to have an affair, go outside of the marriage, and so they clearly were unhappy in some way. They wanted things to be different. They weren't happy, but that wasn't communicated to me. And I think as much as information as I got, which, and I know this is the same for a lot of people who find themselves in these situations, often don't really get an explanation of why and how and you know what was behind it, or there's often very little closure because there's often very little conversation. But at the very least, it's an indication of somebody not being satisfied and happy. So to not communicate that, and one of probably the only thing I got was, oh well, I never thought that would go down well to have that conversation. And I own my part. I own my part in maybe being the person who wasn't perceived as able to receive that conflict, conversation, criticism, whatever it might have been. And I think it's looking at it as a whole. So seeing both sides, and I've worked really hard to do that, to kind of lift myself out of not wanting to be a victim, not wanting to be a martyr to it, to genuinely, truly understand if I couldn't get the other side, which I've got very little in ways, in terms of closure, but I can do anything and everything I want in terms of what I understand and my interpretation of it. So I try to do that in a healthy way and own my part and see where maybe I could have been different. And actually, exactly a little bit like we were saying about each person has their own beliefs and their own values. It's okay to think, well, I'm approachable, and you know, if something came along, somebody could speak to me. Is that how other people perceive me? Emotionally, am I showing up as somebody who is open to a conversation? So from that perspective, I am really clear now in my communication. I'm very conscious of how I show up, how I speak, how I relate, how I share what I've got to say, and to be open and let whoever I'm interacting with know that I'm open and okay with whatever's needs to come out. Because sometimes it is almost giving people permission. There is a kind of, and if you don't realize that you're not, or how you're being perceived is sending a completely different message to the one you think you're giving out. This is just a recipe for confusion and disaster. And I think that's, on the whole, kind of looking back and taking all the pieces and having gone through a lot of work and put a lot of time and effort in. For me, I look at that and I think, if I can share what I've learned, along with everything else that I've learned, all the actual trainings and things I've done with other people, if the minimum of what somebody can take from that is, oh, actually, I feel like this and I think this is what I'm portraying, is it? And having the courage to check in and have that open and honest dialogue, then the rest is what it is. But if that origin of communicating is done in a really conscious way and an honest way, I think you've got a better than average chance of a good outcome from that, haven't you?
Absolutely. And I've been in that situation myself where I think I'm portraying myself as somebody very laid back, easygoing, and not likely to take offence at much or have serious judgments about anything. But then I've been told I come across as quite intimidating. So it's like
yeah, well, it's amazing, isn't it, actually, how we don't recognize our own power, because most people don't. I mean, some people are very, very aware of their own power and amp it up to several degrees, but most of us just don't realize that what presence we've got, what power we've got, how we're coming across. And the only way we ever do, because we do spend so much of our lives on automatic pilot, in kind of not conscious, without awareness, not realizing, getting up every day, doing what we do, and not taking the time, not putting the spotlight on us, not seeing who we are, what we're doing, how we're doing it, and how we're feeling. And it is only by bringing that awareness and becoming conscious and then operating from that place. I'll give you a little anecdote that might kind of emphasize this, and say I'll give you an idea of exactly where I was in terms of not seeing the world and me. So after my marriage broke down, in this desperate place of floundering about trying to find somewhere to make sense, I as I do a lot, and a lot of us do, there'll be a book. I'm sure that there must be a book out there that will it'll all make sense. And I read several things, and then I found this book called "Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus."
Oh yeah,
and I was, oh, this is brand new knowledge. Why the hell didn't anybody tell me any of this? What have I been doing? How did I manage to stay married for 24 years? How did I get a man in the first place? And I in my head, I thought, oh, this is going to revolutionize. And then I looked the publication date, and this book was way, way, way older than the date of my marriage breakdown. And I just stopped and thought, what was I exactly that? What was I doing? Why did I not know this?
Yeah.
Why did I not know this? And so I learned very quickly, acclimatized very quickly to this whole, what felt like a brand new world, all these revelations. But actually they were, the world was just living in that way. I'd just been in my world I got, married at 21, had my daughters at 22 and my son at 25. And that was my world. I worked, I had friends, I did lots of different things. It's not like I just kind of stayed in the house. I wasn't somebody who was shut away. I was doing lots of things, but actually I wasn't part of that world. I wasn't aware of that way of thinking about relationships, about communicating and interacting. And I kind of somehow, by hook or by crook, got through that many years, which I think a lot of people do. I think a lot of people are, why would you be? But I think my position on it now is no. This is vital information for everybody to understand how you think, how the other person might think, how is crucial to make relationships work, because we don't know what's going to crop up. On day one, you do not believe, well, it'd be a poor thing, wouldn't it, if you, on day one, if you thought, oh, this actually might happen. It was the furthest thing from my mind, and I had no defenses. But I do think now, actually, I mean, a little bit like when you have a baby, they say, oh, Nobody gives you a manual. But we do a lot of reading. You know, we do a lot of reading. We give ourselves information about what a baby does and what to do with a baby. But we don't do that with relationships. We just kind of stumble into them and keep going, and then put our head up when something goes wrong. And that's so sad, isn't it? It's so sad to not be getting the best out of ourselves in a relationship, and allowing the other person to be the best of who and what they are as well. So yeah, that's a bit of a soapbox one for me. I think the more knowledge and information we can give ourselves, the better.
Absolutely. You know, this is a key life skill that's not taught in schools, amongst many other things, as well as, you know, not demonstrated or communicated, or even a great role model that we receive from our own parents. So yeah, I absolutely 100% agree that there needs to be a lot more education around this. And you know, that not everybody's a reader, you know, at the end of the day, but people could be taught this information from a young age, how to have healthy relationships, and it's not rocket science, really. You know, and we're just, like you say, left to fend for ourselves, make our own mistakes, and you know, perhaps that's all meant to be part of life's journey. Who knows?
Yeah,
but it doesn't need to be hard.
I think, I think probably, you know, and people do say this, oh, well, you know, back in whatever times, people wouldn't have had access to coaching or therapy or books, and they all managed to have relationships. Well, yes, but they didn't have the internet. They didn't have, they didn't have aeroplanes. They didn't have, the methods and modes of communication and travel and ways of being that we have today. So I think there are areas where we need to catch up a little bit. We've run ahead and life's moved on. But it is a little bit like we're back here, still trying to manage our relationships as though, I don't know, we're in the 1930s or something. And it's just not. I say 1930s. That was just a random date plucked out of my head rather than having any significance. But it's a very different world, isn't it? Yeah. And so I think, particularly for young people, to understand, I don't know, for example, the inability for a text message to convey nuance, to convey actual emotion, however many emojis you might use, you can't, it's words, and they can so easily be misinterpreted, and actually it's so easy to send words that are cruel and can destroy people. It's not a way to communicate, but there are so many relationships that almost run on text messages, and that's petrifying. It's petrifying, isn't it?
I 100% agree with that. I think for any sort of relationship, I mean, text messaging wasn't meant to be for, growing a relationship. It was just meant to, acknowledge an appointment, or, have a quick one-line thank you or cheers for that, rather than, like you say, conduct your whole conversations back and forth with them. Because like you can't really understand somebody's tonality of voice, whether they've said it jokingly, or whether they've said it harshly, or whether they've said it, softly. It's all integral into how we actually receive that, whether it's positive or negative, isn't it?
It absolutely is. And I mean, I learned this firsthand in the period that I was online dating, and it was like, I seem to have just spent the last sort of 13, 14 years having my eyes opened to kind of what's going on in the world. But I was stunned. It was literally kind of message. And it was like somebody felt like they knew you. But then I found I'd feel like I really knew somebody. Never actually met them in person, but it genuinely feels like, because you've had these messages going backwards and forwards. And that's okay if then quite quickly you do move to actually meet somebody in person and make a kind of, informed decision about, is this somebody I want to continue having a conversation with or move? But often there were, I don't know, no intention maybe on the part of the other person. And I found, for various reasons, there was no intention of that person ever actually meeting up. And I was really shocked at how quickly and easily you can feel like you know somebody through electronic communication. And that's brilliant. It's okay. I'm not kind of saying it's not okay, but to rely on that solely and then to actually believe that you really know somebody through it, in that mode, it's not real, and it builds expectation that I'm not sure it can ever be fulfilled, really. The expectation that can build up through that kind of communicating. So, and if you're somebody who's kind of at the whim and will of your emotions, if you're in a really kind of hurt place, if you're still struggling and recovering and traumatized and still trying to deal with the end of something, you're very vulnerable. It's a very vulnerable place to be. And I look back and I can see the difference between interacting from the wound, in that really wounded place, and interacting from a scar. Yeah. And that for me is the biggest thing. And that's one of the things with clients who have come out of heartbreak and are trying to rebuild their lives, that's a thing we try and establish is, here we are, we're working from the wound, and the aim is to then be moving forward and communicating and relating from the scar, because that's where we can have true and real relationships. Whereas anything before that there's such a vulnerability that to not be in have full mastery of your emotions at that point can be disastrous. We can make decisions that aren't right for us, and that's I've seen that a lot, and it is one of the things that I kind of help people with, is those decisions that weren't the right decisions because they were made from a place of being hurt and wounded. And also quite often, because there's so much online dating, particularly for once you get to midlife, it's much harder to meet somebody. So it's quite, this is quite a prevalent way of, and quite normal and okay, but we can't get the real. It feels like we know the person, but we don't. So you combine that with being very wounded and being very hurt, and we can easily make decisions that aren't the right decisions for us. So, and then we're back to square one of a relationship that's not working. So
yeah, absolutely, 100% agree. So for those people listening, Janet, that would really like to connect with you, what's your best contact information?
Well, I'll tell you what, I'll give you my email address. So it's info@janetsmithharrison.co.uk. So all one word, Janet Smith Harrison, all one word. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much for that. It's been a fascinating conversation. Any final words for people listening that might just need to hear one little pearl around how to master your emotions?
Yeah, I think the main one is the slowing down and giving yourself time, pause. When something hits us, when a conversation, a word, and we feel something instantly, if we can just stop and pause and just ask, why do I feel that? Why do I feel angry? Why do I want to scream? Why do I feel hurt? And kind of try and soothe that feeling. Is it coming from the wound? Is it something? You might have to say, I'll get back to you on that. It might take you a day. It might take you 5 minutes. It doesn't matter. As long as if you can just take that time rather than react from that, whatever the trigger was, just give yourself that moment. It is amazing how different the reaction you can put together is to the reaction that you would have had in the moment.
Absolutely.
And for me, that's the kind of seed in that then can grow. It grows you as a full person, and then allows you to have relationships that are full and blooming.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. Because I do feel that, if we feel a response that is triggering within us, that still shows us really that stuff still needs to be healed, doesn't it?
Yeah, Yeah, we are our own best friend. And just as you would expect from any best friend, it's giving you the kind of elbow in the ribs and the little nudge all the time, giving you that sign, sending you messages. So yeah, let's start listening to ourselves as our own best friend.
Thank you so much, Janet. And I'll no doubt have another conversation with you in the near future, because I think this is a fascinating topic, and certainly you're a fountain of knowledge around it.
Oh, I'd love to. That'd be great. Thank you.
So it just leaves me to say, listeners, that true love starts with opening our hearts. Until next time, goodbye for now.
Thanks for listening to the Hearts Entwined podcast. You can follow Lyn via the Facebook group Two Hearts Entwined, or search Lyn Smith, inspirational speaker, at LinkedIn, or email lyn@hearts-entwined.com. That's LYN@hearts-entwined.com. Remember, true love starts with opening our hearts.